So we always talk about narcissists a lot of times in relationships, dating, but we don't talk about as much with the workforce, and we definitely don't talk much about narcissistic friends. So how do you deal with a narcissistic friend? If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations, creator of the NARC app, and your guide in the 45-day Clarity Challenge. You can access that at claritychallenge.net. If you like what you see here, talking about narcissism, my journey in narcissism, talking about narcissistic abuse, hit subscribe and hit that notification for me because we're dropping new videos all the time, and we want to be able to have you interact whenever we go live on the platform, whenever we're doing Q&As, multiple things like that. So we'd love to connect with you there as well. Well, what happens when the narcissist is a friend? When you're dealing with a friend, okay? Because just saying like, hey, don't deal with them, like don't interact with them, like that's not always helpful because you can't always do that. Or you might be in a unique friend dynamic that would be really hard. Sometimes those are tough decisions that people have to make. So we want to talk through that today. I want to talk through this idea of having narcissistic friends, of what boundaries need to be there, some coping strategies, and then decision of what you might need to do. Well, when we're talking about narcissistic friends, it's important to know that narcissistic friends, narcissistic partners, there's all the same underlying things going on. It's not like they're any different. Maybe the tactics, maybe the emotions, maybe the pieces that you see might be coming out a little bit different, but it's the same core. It's the same understanding that there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of guilt running underneath the surface, not as a way to put empathy, but just saying like, this is what's happening. Okay. Oftentimes you're going to find narcissistic friends extremely concerned about self. Like they're going to have that high level of ego. They're going to have that high focus on them. And a lot of it is going to be focused on their needs, sometimes at the expense of other people, at the expense of hurting other people or whatever it might be. It's the idea like I am more important. Oftentimes they'll still use and abuse others, but it ends up being for their own gain. You also see that piece of like no empathy come in, of not caring about their friends, saying they care or saying they care when it matters to them or when it's convenient or when it's easy or when they're getting something out of it. Now, sometimes in like the friend group or things like that, you're going to see people that they're always talking about themselves. Like they're not really interested in others. They're not really interested in caring about anyone else. It's all about them. Sometimes you'll still see the piece of like manipulation. You'll still see all these things come into there. Okay. Sometimes it'll be where you have like a friend group or you have a certain friend and they're like, hey, like let's do this together, and then they cancel, then they disappear. Maybe they just show up unannounced. Maybe it's only like when it suits them, like when it matters to them, then they'll make it happen. Excessive self-talk, a lot of different things of like just focused on the self. Okay, so narcissistic friend, a lot of those are very similar, but we're just kind of bringing that into the friend realm, if that makes sense. So when you're talking with a narcissistic friend, when you have a narcissistic friend, like you need to be able to set like boundaries. And it's important to know that like boundaries are essential for you, period. Like it doesn't matter if they're narcissists or if they're not narcissists, if they're a friend or if they're a partner, you still need boundaries. You have to remember that with a boundary, that is for you. A boundary is your limit of how much shit you're going to take. And after you pass that line, you're like, I'm not going to take anymore. Like, I'm going to go do what I need to do. I'm going to go focus on what I need to do. I'm going to remove myself from the situation, whatever it might be. But those boundaries are meant for you and they're meant for everyone. Okay? So when we're talking about these boundaries, you need to identify the problem behaviors. Like, hey, this is what the problem is. Let me go ahead and reflect on what is this doing to me? Like, is this actually meeting the needs that I have? Is this actually meeting the things that I need in my life? This is actually hurting. This is actually hindering. Okay, then we need to be able to take a pause. And so with this, then you have to decide, I need to figure out a time to be able to talk to this person because I don't know how they're going to respond. Now, be careful with this because when you need to talk to them to be able to establish boundaries, you might have a friend that is going to be really impactful if you meet with them while they're with someone else, or if you meet with them while you're in a group. Or it could be more impactful to meet with them like on your own because you think, hey, we've actually had good talks. We've actually been able to get through to each other sometimes during this times. Okay, so just think about that. Like when to choose the time to talk, be careful about that. Then you got to be clear. And you got to be really direct in establishing these boundaries of like, hey, this is what I need. This is what I'm not going to tolerate. This is something that bothers me. And when you do that, you start to bring up this idea of like, I feel this way. Then it comes across like you're not attacking the person, you're not pushing in a certain direction, but like, I feel like you don't care about me when you take up all the time talking or whatever it might be. Okay, be really specific on like what you're looking for when you're establishing these boundaries. Okay, and be clear, be direct, be clear on what you're looking for, and then stand firm in them. A lot of times people will set up a boundary and then they won't hold to it. They'll just be like, hey, this is my boundary. Oh, but you can break through it anytime. Okay, you need to be able to set clear and direct boundaries, and then you have to stand behind them. Like you have to follow up with whatever consequences, ideas, thoughts that you have about those. Otherwise, you're telling the other person it's okay for you to break through the things that I say because my word doesn't matter. That's really what comes across and what the narcissist ends up doing. Sometimes you might have to have a third party come in and be able to help. A coach, a therapist, a counselor, whatever it might be, to be able to help facilitate or help work through those conversations. But that's some of the pieces of the boundaries. The coping strategies going into this with a narcissistic friend is, first off, along with everything else, is self-care. Like focusing on you. Now, this isn't like I'm the narcissist now, like the ego piece. Like, no, this is focusing on what you need and what you have to do to take care of yourself. So many times you get stripped away, your identity gets pulled aside, your self-esteem gets demolished when you're with a toxic person because they're not interested or they're not respecting or they're not loving or caring of you at all. So you have to kind of take a step back and ground yourself in the truth. Like, what is the truth of the situation and how am I going to know that this is real versus what they're saying or versus what they're doing? Okay, know that you aren't being unreasonable about the things that you're asking, the boundaries that you're setting up, whatever it might be, but you're like, no, like this is what I want. Like this is what I'm not going to tolerate, things like that. Okay, when you're having these conversations, it's important not to get sucked in to drama or into arguments. Now, we know a lot of times narcissists love arguments, but they also love winning and they love being right. So it's really important to not engage in an argumentative tone, in an argumentative way, because it's probably not going to get you your desired result. So with that, try to make sure that you don't get pulled in. You don't get sucked into that idea of them wanting a reaction and getting a reaction out of you. Whenever you're dealing with this situation, you might have to work on reframing a lot of negative thoughts because you'll be like thinking like either bad thoughts or thoughts that are really negative or thoughts that they're pushing you down because of how they're treating you. So you might have to reframe that. Be like, no, like I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know my value, different things like that. Work on building in good habits that keep you sane, that keep you confident in that relationship, in that growth, in those moments. Okay, so that's just couple quick things, overview. And then sometimes you're faced with a decision of like, do I continue this friendship or do I end it? Like we've been friends for years, but it's just not working because I'm not able to grow into the person I need to be when I'm surrounding myself with people that are still pulling me down, that are still keeping me back. Okay. With this, you might have that conclusion. You might have this thought process of like, I might have to end it. Because I'm not having any respect in the relationship. I'm not having my boundaries like paid attention to by this friend. Like they keep blowing through them. They keep not caring about what's bothering me, what's affecting or what's hurting me. There's no care demonstrated. There's no love or respect as a friend. There's none of that there to actually be like, hey, I value you as a person. So then it might be at a time where you need to end it. But you need to try to be able to get out of it as easy as possible, or sometimes as positive as possible. Sometimes that's easier as a friend to be able to pull away and have it kind of like fade off. And sometimes it can be very explosive. So you need to be careful walking through that. But you need to be focused on the future and the goal of as you get out of that friendship, then it's like, okay, let me establish healthy friendships moving forward. Sometimes that's the hard piece because people are like, but I don't want to let go because this has like been a friend for my entire life. Well, that also might be some of the reason why you haven't been able to excel at some things in life because we oftentimes become the people that we're closest to. And sometimes those people that we're closest to, if they're toxic, are going to keep you back from achieving your full potential, from achieving who you could be. If you're going through this with a narcissistic friend, you're like, I don't even know like where to start, what to do. Like I want to encourage you to reach out, to be able to seek help. Reach out for help, whether that's a therapist, whether that's a coach, whether it's a counselor. I would love to be able to talk to you. If you find that, interacting with me or just some of the straight up answers that I try to give on all the social media would be good for you, then please reach out. Go to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones. We'd love to be able to help you and be a part of your healing journey because it is a process. It's not something you're going to snap your fingers, then it magically gets better. It is going to be a process. That's why we call it a healing journey. My goal is to help people in that healing journey to have that slowly transition into a growth mindset. And as you continue to move forward, you're accelerating, you're growing, you're changing, and you're developing, moving forward into the person that you were meant to be.